Thank you, thank you. Please, thank you very much. I was always told if you happen to get a standing ovation before you speak, you need to say hello, goodbye, and leave, you know. But I'm not going to do that. And the worst thing is, I got to follow that young man that was up here talking. Wow. That's what we need is young people like that are being taught to do that. And so that's the way it should be. Well, it has been a busy week. As he stated, I am a full-time motivational speaker. I started doing that in 2006 at the advice of my wife. Imagine that, guys. Yep. And I've been doing it full-time ever since 2006. I do about 80 a year across the country. And actually, the most I ever did in 1 year was 134. And that's because I was going to make sure that he became President of the United States of America, okay? And so I did everything I could to make sure, and I'm glad I had a little piece of it somewhere along the line. But it really is a great privilege and honor for me to be here with you all because I know it's about the right thing, and that's what's important. I am a big motivational speaker based on leadership because I found out early in my career that leadership was probably the most important thing we needed to be able to do correctly. And we have failed in many, many parts of the world in making sure that we have the right leaders in the right place, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of it today, that's for sure. So I'm glad to see that. But leadership is my number one thing, and I will tell you there's only two kinds of leaders that exist on the face of the earth. There's only two, good ones and bad ones. There's no maybes, okay? And I was blessed, as a few things that he pointed out, to have the opportunity to serve with some great, great leaders along the way. And it definitely impacted my entire career. When I was in Korea in 1978 as a young captain, I got the privilege after 3 months there to become the aide to the division commander of the 2nd Infantry Division, about 20,000 soldiers in that division. That was the most amazing 9 months of my life when I was with General David E. Grange, Jr. If the name is familiar to some of you, it's because he is the father of Best Ranger competition that takes place at Fort Benning, Georgia, every year. General Grange turned 93 this past April the 9th. And he's struggling, but he's doing okay. And I was his aide. General Grange and I have always talked every birthday he's had. And we always talk on my birthday. Our birthdays are the same day, so it made it easy, okay? And that is the honest truth, really is. But he was a great leader, and I learned from him probably more than any one person in my career. I was blessed, though, in all honesty, to really, I think, start learning about leadership when I was a young athlete. Because as my father said to people, if there is a ball, Danny will pick it up and play it, okay? I was a quarterback on my high school football team. I was the catcher on the baseball team and a point guard on the basketball team. If you look at every one of those positions, folks, they're about leadership. And that's the reason I love to see young people getting involved in stuff that will teach them that it's about leadership. And they want to be leaders, that's how they can learn. So my career really started out very early on. There's an abbreviation for leadership that we use in the Army. It's 7 letters called LDRSHIP. Loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. You take those 7 letters and you put them together and you can learn how to lead. You really can. And I always challenge people to look at those 7 letters of loyalty and duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage, and choose which one that you think is most important if you wanted to lead. And especially if you want to teach young people, make them sort of get a feel for what leadership is really about. I think it's the greatest thing on the face of the earth. But we do have to live with the fact that there's only two kinds, good ones and bad ones, okay? So that, when I heard the young man up here speaking, I said, well, I don't need to say anything about that. He took care of all of that, I think, for me, you know. But I want to talk about a few other things that I think are important. When we are looking at what's going on today, what happened today, as the sheriff pointed out, we have to look at it through our eyes, the future of our country. Those are our kids, and they're in harm's way, and that's unnecessary. So we're going to work at that one. I know the sheriff's working at it, and I can promise you I'm working at it in Brevard County where I live. I do a lot of work with Sheriff Wayne Ivey. If you know who Wayne is, I'm sorry, but you know, that's just Wayne. But I really am. And I'm going to schools all across Brevard County. I want to see what they have in place. And you want me to tell you what they have in place? Nothing. And we got to fix that. We can't let a young man like today walk into a school and start killing our kids. We got to stop it. And we're the ones that's going to start it. We're going to stop it. I have grandkids. Actually, I even have a great-grandkid. That's really tough. Whew. She's 1 year old. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, a 7-year-old granddaughter, and an 8-year-old grandson. I also have a 22 and 26-year-old. You don't even want to know that, okay? But about those other 4, a lot of you are like me. You're grandparents. And you have grandkids. And a whole bunch of you in here are parents and have kids. We have got to stop what's going on. We cannot allow our children to have to grow up in schools that are not safe. Look back when we were in schools, you know. And the sheriff talked about it too very clearly. And we have got to stop this. And it is what I have taken on as a new mission for myself. Because I am not going to let your kids, your grandkids, my grandkids, not grow up to live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. So I had to put that in there tonight, and I wouldn't have even done that if what hadn't happened today. But unfortunately, folks, this happened too many times, and you already know that in our country. So we can't let that happen. So that is something I know the sheriff's really hard on and working hard at, and I'm part of that, and I'm very blessed of it. But I want to tell you a good story. I wasn't trying to tell you bad stories. I want to tell you a good one. 10 days ago, I guess it was, maybe 12 now, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure where I am right now. I flew out of Orlando on Wednesday and got to Norfolk, Virginia Wednesday night. I spoke at Christopher Newport University on Thursday morning for 4 hours. Then I was going to get on a plane at 4 o'clock to fly back to Orlando to drive to Tallahassee. That plane didn't decide to come back to Orlando till 6 at night, so I got in about 9 o'clock. Then I drove to Tallahassee. I spoke in Tallahassee today to a great group of young men and women that are, most of them in high school, juniors and seniors. And then tonight, I'm here with you. Now, I hope somebody's going to show me which way to get home, all right? Otherwise, I might be spending the night with you. But you know, that's just sort of a great blessing to me. But I want to tell you a good story that I had the opportunity to enjoy about 2 weeks ago. And it was tough for me because where I was at the University of Florida. And I am a Seminole, okay? I already heard and I see some of the Gator things. Did y'all check how many times we beat y'all in a row now? I'll let you know later if you want to ask, okay? Don't worry. Hey, it is what it is. Can you imagine a Seminole getting a master's degree at the University of Florida? I taught ROTC for 3 years there, and I did that. And I got a master's degree, and people said, why did you do that? I said, I found an easy place to get a master's degree. It was fine, okay? See, I always get to have the last word, don't I? Yeah, that's important. Hey, we got to have some fun, you know, gee. But what I did there was very, very special. Santa Fe Community College, they have a law enforcement program there. One of the best in the state of Florida, without question. And they had 39 officers, 39 brand new officers that became officers in our law enforcement community. 39 of them. That's the second largest class to ever graduate from the Law Enforcement Academy at Santa Fe Community College. They had one that was 50 one time. Well, those 39 were very special. I got to speak at the event. I got to shake all their hands and talk to them some afterwards. They had a tough, tough time, folks, whether you know about it or not, because those 39 that were going to graduate, before they graduated, they had 2 deputy sheriffs come to the academy and talk to them. And those 2 officers had been there and graduated from that academy 5 years before. And they were there. So they talked to these young men and women. And then they came back about 2 weeks later trying to recruit some of them. And as many of you probably know, shortly after that, those 2 deputies were shot and killed eating in a restaurant. That devastated that class of 39. They would tell you that. They were so devastated, they were trying to figure out how they could possibly go to the funeral and honor them. And there was a small church that had a bus. All 39 of those soon-to-be officers went and stood there to honor those 2 officers that were killed. The most important part of that to me is we have 39 young men and women now that are willing to go protect us at any time and anywhere. And when you consider that they had a really tough challenge because they lost 2 friends that came to them and talked to them, that's a big deal. So every night when you say your prayers, you're probably like me. That's always in my prayer. When I speak to God, I ask Him to make sure He protects all of our military that are across the world, and ask Him to protect all of our law enforcement officers, men and women across the country. So those 39 are going to be blessed, I know that. So I did that morning. And then in the afternoon, one of the greatest privileges I could ever have, there were 14 young men and women in the uniform of the United States Army that were going to be raising their right hand to swear and protect the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Those 14 were commissioned. I spoke at that as well, and I actually got to commission one of the young men. His father and I are very close, and he called me and told me about it and said, "Would you mind swearing me in?" I said, "I'd be thrilled." He says, "Well, that means you still have to be in uniform. Can you still wear a uniform?" He and I had a discussion later, okay? But we have 14 new men and women that are in the United States Army today. So we have officers, men and women, in law enforcement that are willing to go do it, and we have young men and women in uniform of the United States Army. I think we're always in good hands because of that. I truly do. And I have to say that the law enforcement community is very special to me because one of my son-in-laws, I have 2 son-in-laws that are great. One's an assistant vice principal at a school. The other one is a deputy sheriff in Indian River County. I have a really gigantic commitment to taking care of my family. But I have great people to help me with it along the way. You know, when I look at leadership right now, I think we have a pretty good leader in charge. We have somebody that's willing to make the hard right decisions. Somebody that's not worried about what people think. And that's what we have to be. We have to be willing to make the hard right decisions versus the easy wrong. It's that simple. I have a journey that I go on every 5 years, It started in 1993. In 1993, you may recall that on October the 3rd and the 4th was when the Battle of Mogadishu happened. I lost 6 of my kids that day. 6 of my kids that I could never bring back. But I promised myself that they would never be forgotten. So since 1993, every 5 years, I go visit their grave sites and spend time with them. This is 2018, folks. This will be the 25th year since October the 3rd in 1993. Linda and I will be making our journey again. We will go visit all 6 grave sites. We'll start probably this time in Rehoboth, Massachusetts, where Corporal James Cavaco is buried. We'll go to Vineland, New Jersey, where Sergeant Dominic Pila is buried. When we go to Vineland, we always stop at the Pila's house. Of the 6 families, I'm very close with 4 of them. Ben Pila is the closest. He warned me one time if I ever came to Vineland and didn't tell him, he would hunt me down. He's an Italian. I think he might be a bad guy. I don't know. We will go from Vineland, New Jersey, though. We will go to Arlington National Cemetery. And we all know the importance of Arlington National Cemetery. There is only one like it in the whole world. And I will go there, and Linda and I will look at 2 headstones. Ranger Richard Kowalewski and Sergeant Casey Joyce. And there's people that have asked me a question about that. They said, we understand your 2 guys there, but there's one in between that's not one of your guys. Why is that? Because the one in between is a Delta Force operator who was also killed in Somalia, Master Sergeant Grizz Martin. It was done that way because Rangers support the Delta Force operators. It was done on purpose. We will then go to Fort Benning, Georgia, where Jamie Smith is buried. His parents moved from New Jersey when they retired, and they live now just north of Atlanta, Georgia, because they wanted to be closer to their son. Jamie was a great young man. We will then make our last trip to visit the gravesite of Sergeant Lorenzo Ruiz. He's buried in the Fort Bliss National Cemetery in El Paso, Texas. They will never be forgotten because they made the ultimate sacrifice so that you and I could be sitting here tonight, safe and sound. And they're my kids, and they always will be my kids. And I got to add one in here that I didn't write anything about. And being here in Citrus County, this is a hard one for me. I had a young sergeant with me in Mogadishu. His name was Aaron Weaver. I'm sure many of you know who Aaron Weaver is. Aaron was just a dynamic, terrific young man. He was a young sergeant with me when we were in the streets of Mogadishu. When we got ready to go back in after we were getting out of the battle, I remember telling Sergeant Weaver, and I actually said to him, Sergeant Weaver, you go and take the lead vehicle. You lead us back. He looked at me and he said, sir, why do you want me to lead back? You need to lead back. I says, no. You know how to get back? I'm going to bring up the rear. The reason I chose to do that, folks, I wanted to make sure nobody got left behind. And Aaron Weaver led us back. Aaron was awesome. As you know, he had a battle with cancer. He survived that. He was in the 82nd Airborne Division. He was flying helicopters. When he went down in a helicopter that was shot down in Iraq, and I found out that day, it was a devastating moment for me because he's one of the finest young men I've ever known in my life. And he was in a Red Cross helicopter. Does that tell you something? The bad guys don't care, do they? Because I'm pretty sure the Geneva Convention clearly says you cannot engage a helicopter of the Red Cross. The bad guys don't listen. That's the reason we have to be the best at what we do every day, 24 hours a day. Nancy Weaver and Savannah, her daughter, are very, very close to me and Linda. They even came to First Baptist Church in Cocoa and heard me speak on Memorial Day. Savannah loved going in the pool, so that was a good thing too. And I now know that she's going to get married again. And I'm thrilled for her. She's waited a long time. And if you want to go visit a very special grave site, you know where Aaron is. Right here, nearby, in Bushnell. That's where he's at. Yeah, go see him too. We have to make sure that those that pay the ultimate price and make the ultimate sacrifice are never, ever forgotten. That's the only reason we can be here tonight, safe and sound, because of those like Aaron Weaver. I thank you for letting me be here with you tonight. It is truly an honor and a privilege. I know some of you have already seen the fact that there's a book out there. Believe it or not, I wrote a book, yes. Yes, a Seminole, I wrote a book, yes, okay. But I wrote a book for a reason. I thought you deserved to know the rest of the story that you never heard about. I don't know if you remember who the president was on October the 3rd, but I do. It was President Bill Clinton. He and I did not get along well. He's also got a copy of my book because I mailed it to him. I don't know if he read it or not because I don't know how well he read, so I don't know the answer to that question. And I actually met him when we were invited to the White House after we got back from Somalia. He is a great speaker without question. But when you ask me a question, I give you an answer. Don't look to the person on your left or right and say, do you think that really happened? Because that's what happened when President Clinton asked me a question. I have never forgotten it, and I never will. I have never lied to anybody in my life, because if I did, my father would come out of his grave and kill me. I learned really well at home. We need to have leaders that trust us with what we do in the military and the law enforcement. We need that trust. And I'm pretty sure that the President of the United States right now, Donald Trump, he trusts his military, he trusts his law enforcement, he trusts his first responders. And for that reason, we will continue to be the great country we are. And I'm pretty sure, I hope to be able to get a book to him because I think he would like to read it, where it says, leadership at its best, political correctness at its worst. My favorite quote. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for letting me be here with y'all tonight. This is an awesome, awesome evening. God bless you, and God bless America.